This is the newly refreshed Maserati Ghibli, which is the Italian luxury automaker's answer to the BMW 5 Series and Mercedes-Benz E-Class. Whereas its German rivals are more sensible and fully loaded with tech, the Ghibli aims to stand out with its emotional appeal and Italian flair. But are these factors enough for you to pick the Ghibli over its German and even the Japanese rivals? In terms of design, there's no denying that this is such a beautiful car. From its proud trident badge, sharply designed xenon HID headlights, hindi pa to adaptive LEDs as standard by the way, along with its gorgeous long hood and short rear deck proportions. And I assure you, hindi kwentong barbero itong sasabihin ko sa inyo. Because over the course of a weekend with this car, I encountered 5 random strangers asking permission to me if they could have a photo with this car. And I especially remember the guy in the blue Mitsubishi Adventure, which I met in Crosswinds Tagaytay. So shoutout to you sir if you're watching this video. And that says a lot towards the Maserati Ghibli's design. And in a sea of BMWs, Audis, Mercs, and Lexus vehicles filling up our high-end districts, talagang nag-i-stand out itong Maserati Ghibli. And therefore, I actually wouldn't blame you if you'll solely buy this car because of its looks. Now, dumako naman tayo sa kanyang interior.
So now that we're in the interior of the Maserati Ghibli, no, and in terms of the overall modernity niya, it's not on par with something like a BMW or basically every single German rival sa totoo lang, no. Wala ka ng mga digital gauges. Meron ka lang ditong 7-inch multi-information display sa gitna ng dalawang analog gauges na ito, no? But the analog gauges actually look really nice, no? The layout looks like a chronograph, like a watch. It complements well with the analog clock dito ng Maserati. Classy touch actually, maganda siya. In terms of tech talaga, mas lamang talaga ang Germans by like a landslide, no? But siguro this interior has character, kung sabihin natin na meron siya ng mga leather surfaces dito sa dashboard, sa doors. There's a lot of leather actually. That's the one thing na maano sa mga Italian brands, no? There's more leather here. Though in terms of build quality, mas lamang din talaga ang Germans by a lot. So to lang. The buttons, again, this is a Fiat Chrysler automobile or a Stellantis na nga pala at this point, a Stellantis vehicle, no? So ang notorious sa kanya is that it shares the wiper stalks and the window controls with a Fiat Chrysler automotive product like a Dodge Dart or a Jeep Renegade. For me, yung stocks niya are okay. I mean, yung kanyang damping feel, mas damp yung pakiramdam naman niya compared sa Jeep Renegade. I have no issues din sa kanyang window switches, to be honest. I think that was overblown, yung pagiging shared niya with the Fiat Chrysler automotive product. It's okay for me. It feels nice naman. I mean, if you didn't know that it was from a Dodge Dart or a Jeep Renegade yung kanyang window switches, I actually wouldn't mind. The overall quality is a mixed bag for me. Hindi siya parang sa mga German brands at talagang it's solid and tightly built all around the interior. But yeah, it's a premium place to be in. It's full of character compared, I guess, to a German brand na seryoso yung interior. But yeah, that leads me to the car's infotainment system. Sure, it's not as sophisticated as iDrive 7 sa BMW 5 Series or the MBUX ng E-Class. But itong infotainment system is actually one of the best para sa akin. It's responsive, ang sobrang ng touch responses niya. Apple CarPlay and Android Auto comes sa standard ng wireless, by the way. And the overall graphics, ang super sharp niya actually. It's like you have a high-resolution iPad sa dashboard mo. It's really sharp, really responsive. Talagang there's no lags about touch input mo. That's really good for me. I mean, this is from a Fiat Chrysler automotive na vehicle din, but if you're gonna see my reviews of those cars, gusto ko rin yung mga infotainment system nila, yung Uconnect, basically na infotainment system nila. It's a good one. Pagdating dito sa Maserati Ghibli, it's even better now. The interface looks sharp, looks elegant. I like how it's well presented. It looks good. Really good. Maybe not as slick as iDrive, but yeah. Meron ka ring rotary knob controller dito sa kanyang center console, kinda like BMW iDrive, but it really doesn't do much, to be honest. Either way, you're gonna mostly use a touchscreen anyway naman, so I wouldn't mind using the rotary knob controller dito, which is more of a volume knob, to be honest. But yeah, there's that option if you want to use that. And so that leads me to the car's back seats then. Tara, lipat tayo.
Moving towards the back seats, and I'm actually surprised how little room you have here. Especially when you consider the fact that this car measures 4.9 meters long. And while I do fit just fine behind my driving position, taller adults will struggle for headroom. And let's not even talk about the middle seat, which is totally cramped even by compact luxury sedan standards. The Ghibli is certainly best experienced at the driver's seat. This is a Maserati after all. And then moving towards the Ghibli's trunk, which is of course power operated at this price point, and you are offered with 500 liters of space, which is slightly less than the class average. For perspective, the BMW 5 Series offers 30 liters more. And if you're planning to use the Ghibli on a grocery run, the trunk area actually gets quite warm. So expect your frozen food to thaw on your way home. 3 engine choices are available for the Maserati Ghibli, with the range kicking off with this 48-volt mild hybrid powertrain, which replaces the V6 diesel. And then you also have a twin-turbo V6 gasoline engine in 2 states of tune, a 350 horsepower version for the standard Ghibli, and a 430 horsepower version for the Ghibli S. But regardless of engine choice, all come with an 8-speed automatic made by ZF.
So as for the driving experience of the Maserati Ghibli, the car performs actually really well for, for a sports luxury sedan on a daily basis. The comfort levels are really good, and the car drives pretty great on a daily basis, no? So the car is really refined. There's plenty of sound insulation, and the windows, by the way, are your double glazed, double layer acoustic glass. So in terms of the refinement, the car is really quiet. The engine, road, and wind noise are really muted. And even through these rough asphalt, no, yung hindi na ganun ka-smooth, hindi pa rin ganun katapang yung kanyang tire roar, no? So again, that aspect is really important in a mid-size luxury sports sedan such as the Maserati Ghibli. Maybe mas refined ang Mercedes-Benz E-Class, but maybe not by much. Siguro if there's gonna be one car that's truly refined talaga, that would be the Lexus ES Hybrid, no? Because of the hybrid powertrain, which really puts the car into electric mode for most of the time as you're driving through itong low speed maneuvers lang naman. The ES would be really a quiet mid-sized luxury sedan, but the Ghibli is still really good for a sports sedan in terms of refinement, and that's an important aspect for buyers of this car. Comfort levels are really good. The suspension may be on the firm side, but ride is still pretty good. It's firm and controlled yung ride niya, so may onting degree of absorption pa rin siya sa mga lubak, pero hindi siya matagtag. The ride is really good. This doesn't come with the optional adaptive skyhook suspension, yung adaptive suspension technology ng Maserati, but it's still pretty good for a suspension na was meant for sporty handling. The steering during low speed maneuvers, it's really light. Ang ganda it's really friendly for use in the city, lalo na if you're doing some parking maneuvers. And it really makes this car easy to drive on these scenarios, no? Despite the fact that even if you're driving a sports sedan, a Maserati for that matter, na may long hood ka sa harap, and basically the Maserati Ghibli performs really well on the road. Maganda yung driving performance niya. Then as for fuel economy, yun nga lang, this might be a mild hybrid. This might be marketed as a hybrid, but you have to remember this is a mild hybrid with a 48-volt integrated starter generator, ISG. It doesn't run on pure electric mode at any point sa kanyang driving experience, no? And right now, ang aking fuel economy figure is 8.9 kilometers per liter, which is I'm pretty sure naman the people who buy a car like this sa segment na ito, the people who buy a car with 330 horsepower don't really care about fuel economy. It's more of like para a bonus na lang. But yeah, it's not exactly as fuel efficient as I expected for a mild hybrid, no, but yeah. Isipin nyo na lang, this car has 330 horsepower, and for a car with that much power to do 8.9 kilometers per liter on the average city highway and sporty driving, that's gonna be pretty good na, all things considered. Now, as we enter through a set of twisty roads, and the Maserati Ghibli actually performs really well. As you go through this set of corners, there's plenty of grip sa kanyang chassis, no? The chassis is planted, it's very rigid, no? So, kahit may mga lubak sa kalsada, it doesn't upset the car's handling, hindi siya yung parang ma-upset. And because this is a perfect 50-50 weight distribution na rear-wheel drive sports sedan, no? It really corners excellently. It darts through the corner really well. It really, in terms of driving fun, this is really neck and neck talaga with the BMW 5 Series, no? Yun nga lang, there's one aspect where I ever so slightly prefer the 5 Series over the Maserati Ghibli. Ever so slight lang naman. So, that's gonna be the steering feel, no? So, for 2018, ang 2018 model year niya, Maserati thoroughly upgraded the electric power steering ng Ghibli, no? So, before kasi, if you're gonna watch yung mga Western media, yung mga reviews na with the Ghibli, the steering was, how do I say, it's awful daw. Ang pangit daw ng steering feel. I've never driven the Ghibli. This is gonna be the first time I'm gonna drive the Ghibli or any Maserati for that matter. So in 2018, they've thoroughly revamped the electric power steering of the Ghibli. And ngayon, ang pakiramdam niya sa akin is, well, I think they've fixed it. I haven't driven the previous Ghibli, so I am not sure kung what they're talking about. But for me, it's now perfectly adequate for a sports sedan. The steering is responsive. Ang super sharp niya. However, ang medyo mas prefer ko sa BMW nga lang is that yung steering ng 5 Series has a more consistent feel. Not a huge concern. It's still a sharp steering. It's a good steering pa rin. Not siguro in terms of consistent feel pagdating, let's say, compared to a 5 Series. But overall, it's still a good electric power steering for a sports sedan, no? It's sharp, it's responsive. Pero yun nga lang, if there's gonna be one aspect that I would prefer the Ghibli ever so slightly compared to the BMW 5 Series is, despite this car being a hybrid, or rather a mild hybrid, no, mas prefer ko yung engine sound niya kasi, or maybe not engine sound but more of exhaust sound. Kasi when this car is in sport mode, now let's put this car in sport mode, ang ganda na tunog ng exhaust niya. Actually, may parang burble, may gargle. Bad description. May burble yung exhaust niya in sport mode. It sounds sort of like the V6 ng Ghibli when you try to rev it hard. It sounds good actually for a hybrid. Yun nga lang, in the inside, the 4-cylinder turbo gasoline engine doesn't really make itself felt. Sa totoo lang in terms of sound, rinig siya but it's muted for a sports sedan. But still, compared to the 520 luxury line, mas maganda naman tunog nito compared to the 5 Series, no? So, basically it's a compromise. The 5 Series has slightly better steering, while the Ghibli has slightly better sound. So, take your pick. Then as for the rest of the driving experience, well, the suspension deals pretty well with body roll. As in, throw this to a corner, there's really non-existent in terms of body roll. Talagang it's gonna be cornering flat. The suspension keeps all 4 wheels in contact sa ground. The ride is firm because of that sporty tuned suspension, but it's okay. I mean, hindi siya yung firm na matagtag. It's more of firm, but it's still deals pretty well with bumps, no? So, hindi siya yung matagtag. It's more like, it basically has a good compromise between siguro softness and firmness. Okay siya. It's actually a good riding sports sedan. It's not matagtag. It's really good for me. I mean, I tend to prefer a sports sedan or a luxury sedan na hindi masyadong floaty. I want a car that has a controlled ride, and the Ghibli delivers. Yung nga lang, may onting sharpness nga siya because of the low profile tires then, but overall it's okay. The Ghibli drives really well, it handles really well. Then now we have to talk about the engine. As mentioned, compared to, like, for example, a 520i, itong 4-cylinder mild hybrid powertrain na to sounds really good, at least on the outside. In the inside, ang muted niya, ang tahimik. But if you rev it on your garage o nakabukas yung sport exhaust niya, it sounds really good. And the engine, for the most part, it does feel linear, pero may pagkakataon na, at least under normal mode, may onting lag yung kanyang 4-cylinder engine, but it's not too bad. I mean, noticeable but not terrible. But once a mild hybrid system and the engine itself is now in rhythm, as in yung they're in tandem na in powering this car, the transition, it actually basically works seamlessly, no? So put it in sport mode, yung turbo lag almost disappears. It feels like a naturally aspirated V6 nga sa totoo lang if you put the car in sport mode. And yeah, as we're now driving in sport mode, the engine feels tractable, it feels linear, and that's when the sport exhaust opens up, and that's when the car starts to sound better compared to the 520i, you know. This car also is using the ZF 8-speed automatic. It's the same transmission that you would find in the 5 Series, in every single rear-wheel drive BMW, and sa Toyota GR Supra, and a number of other high-end vehicles, no, that uses the ZF 8-speed. Maraming cars actually use the ZF 8-speed, maraming premium cars, and this Maserati is no exception. It's a good transmission. It shifts really well. The shifts are silky smooth. Sobrang ganda ng shift quality. Yun nga lang, though the transmission is really good, it's silky smooth, it shifts fast, and I would still prefer to have paddle shifters nga lang, because it's a shame, no, that engine and the transmission combo are really good. It would be a shame nga lang if we didn't have paddle shifters. I would appreciate if it had paddle shifters, but not a big deal. It's still a good driving sports sedan. The brakes are also reassuringly good, despite having a degree of electrification. Okay pa rin ang pakiramdam ng brakes, and it really stops the car in a dime, no, if you're driving this car enthusiastically.
If you're interested in purchasing a Maserati, pricing is only available upon request, since these cars are via indent order. But the Ghibli Hybrid that we're driving today has a base price of 6,990,000 pesos, which makes it one of the most expensive mid-sized luxury sedans out there. So, is it worth it? That depends on your perspective, because in most objective measurements, the Maserati Ghibli doesn't exactly stand out when compared to its German and Japanese rivals. But in terms of design and character, there's really nothing quite like the Maserati Ghibli. Sure, as a mild hybrid, its fuel economy is actually quite disappointing. But when you consider the sheer performance you get, it then actually becomes quite acceptable. And based on the attention that this car gets, there's no denying that the Maserati Ghibli is a much more special car. And based on that sense of occasion alone, that's already enough justification for some people to spend a bit more for a Maserati over a much more mainstream BMW.